And while the race itself wasn't terribly controversial, the Ultimate Champion turns out to be fairly controversial.
It was probably the one person NASCAR didn't want to have win. Welcome back, everyone. We have a special episode this week. We're not doing our normal real estate and economy and whatnot segments of this and that. We are just talking NASCAR this week because we are back from the NASCAR Championship Weekend up in Phoenix. And so...
Special edition NASCAR report.
Exactly. So we'll cover the 3 races, I guess 4 maybe if we talk about ARCA.
Yeah, that really wasn't much to talk about in that race.
And then some tips and tricks for if you decide to go up to Phoenix for a race, our kind of recommendations now that we've been there several times.
Yes.
And our best practices for the weekend.
And I have to say a big kudos to the gate checkers and whatnot. Big crowd arriving, particularly on Sunday, and it took us less than 5 minutes
to
fast. Get through the line and security and whatnot. And in past years, a few years ago, we spent like an hour in line one time. So
I think we also got there a little bit later that time, but still there was a decent number of people in line this time, and it went fast.
It went very fast, yeah. So, Kelly knows I'm not the most patient person when waiting in line. So, kudos to Phoenix Raceway. They did a great job getting people in and out of the grandstands for that race. So that made my weekend go a lot better. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So do you want to start with tips and tricks, or do you want to start with the races?
I think we should start with the race.
Okay.
Races.
So start with Friday night and the Truck Series.
Yeah, since ARCA was kind of boring.
ARCA was extremely boring, which usually those guys are fairly comical and have lots of things going on, but it was pretty well dominated by one driver and
not enough cars on too big of a track, so not a lot of passing.
Yeah. So
Friday night rolls around, and we've got the truck race.
Yes, and it is the coolest it has been in a number of years.
Yes.
So crews had to do a little more research, go a little further back in their notebooks to make sure that the vehicles were set up correctly and whatnot. And Ty Majeski pretty much just dominated the race.
Yeah, I don't think there was much question on that one as far as the playoff drivers and who had the best car and was the best driver in that race.
He led 132 out of 150 laps.
Yeah, it's pretty dominant.
Yes, yeah. And if I remember correctly, probably the only times he didn't lead were after pit stops or something to that effect, Yeah. Usually the truck race is action-packed, i.e. craziness going on. It was much tamer this year.
Yeah, it was pretty tame this year. There weren't a lot of shenanigans from the drivers, which I feel like in years past we've had some interesting moves and whatnot in the truck race. It was kind of low-key this time. And it went really fast right up until the end, and then we got a few cautions in a row, but the first 3/4 of that race flew by.
Yes, virtually caution-free other than the stage breaks. And I raised this, part of me does understand, but I don't understand in the championship race because there are no stage points and all that type of stuff.
Why are you essentially creating competition cautions?
Right. So why throw stage cautions? Just let them go. Now, it's also a very convenient time to run commercials.
Yeah, your TV timeout likes that.
Yes. And that, if you remember that first caution Friday night with the trucks, it went like a whole bunch of laps before they even opened pit road. And
well, the caution came out right before the stage break. There was an incident that caused it, so it pushed the stage victory timeline into having to run those last few laps under caution. And then it still took a couple laps to get pit road open.
That caution ended up being like 11 laps for a pretty much a minor spin.
Yeah.
And So that was kind of an annoyance.
Anticlimactic.
The other annoyance that we had was our scanners weren't very loud until during practice on Saturday we found a little knob. We had turned up the scanner itself all the way up to as high as it'd go, but
we hadn't found the headset volume.
Yes, we didn't realize that there was a separate volume adjustment. Yeah. And it was just like I remembered after that.
It was like you could hear the drivers again.
Yes, it was amazing.
Funny how that works.
Yeah. So shall we move to Saturday's race with Xfinity?
Sure.
Okay.
And I think this was the best race of the weekend.
I would say so.
So once again, not necessarily Sunday's race being the best. So if you have the opportunity to go for the full weekend, this is why we would recommend going for the full weekend. You might get a better race on Friday or Saturday than what you actually get on Sunday.
Right. And when we say best race, I would say for the championship.
Yeah.
And because once again, we had Riley Herbst dominated, leading 167 out of the 213 laps. I mean, there was a challenge at the end, don't get me wrong. But what was really exciting was Justin Allgaier getting a penalty, and boy, was it by this much. On a restart, he pulled out of line a hair early, and I mean a hair early.
Have you gone back and watched the broadcast version of this?
I haven't yet, no.
Because I would be curious if it's more obvious there, because on the replays that we got at the track, it looked like he was just out of line. Yeah. But I wonder if on TV it was more obvious.
Or they explained it better. Because they do have communications with race control, and they might have gotten an explanation as to why.
Right there. Back it up about 5 or 6 frames before the start-finish line. Keep going and go back, and we're going to go back. He should be behind the 11. You freeze it right there. The 7 needs to be behind the 11. That is the rule.
So Allgaier had to do a drive-through in the pits as a result of that penalty. Ended up speeding.
Yep.
So he had to do another drive-through.
Went down a lap.
And the look on the crew chief's face that they projected on screen, he was so disgusted. And he drove the race of his life from that spot forward.
Yeah.
And it deserved the championship by finishing second in the race.
Yeah. First of the playoff drivers,
yep.
Yeah, that was fun to watch. And it made the end of the race, or like the last quarter to third of it, really exciting. And we had overtime in that race. So there was lots going on in that one.
And it was in one of those overtimes that he passed a bunch of cars to get himself in the position to win the championship.
It's overtime presented by Credit One Bank. Green flag back in the air. A big run for the 7. He tried to go high. Now looking low. They're both trying to get by that 21 as they dive into turn 1. Here comes the 7 to the inside. Allgaier is going to pass both of them.
And it was Junior Motorsports. So Dale Earnhardt Jr. was there to congratulate his driver in victory lane. Actually not in victory lane, on the start-finish line. Probably the most anticlimactic race win of the season if you are not one of the championship drivers. So poor Riley Herbst is over in victory lane, and there's fireworks going off and whatnot, and there's virtually nobody over there. Everybody is focused on the start-finish line where Justin Allgaier is located. So it is what it is, but I kind of feel bad for Riley Herbst there to run such a great race and then have nobody pay any attention to the fact that he won the race.
Yeah, that's true.
So that brings us to the Cup race. And while the race itself wasn't terribly controversial, the Ultimate Champion turns out to be fairly controversial.
It was probably the one person NASCAR didn't want to have win.
Yeah.
Unless you want the press. I don't know. Maybe they don't care because it's that much more press. But
Well, and, you know, Bill France Sr. was a firm believer that any publicity is good publicity. You know, many feel that they chose the wrong winner of the first Daytona 500 on purpose, photo finish, just to keep the race in the news longer. And Bill France Sr., Big Bill, put out the word, you know, looking for photographic evidence of the finish. And it was on Thursday, I believe, after the race that they got a photograph and they changed who won the race. So, yeah.
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 So Joey Logano goes and wins Penske's third championship in a row.
Yep.
And Logano's second in 3 years.
Yeah. And he probably did the least to win a championship
Yeah.
ever.
Yeah. He won a few races at the right time, and that was about all he did.
Yep.
And the rest of the time, he kind of sucked.
Yes. So the playoffs were put in place pretty much in response to Terry Labonte winning the championship when he won 2 races, and Jeff Gordon won, I think, 6 or more races that season.
What year was that? Roughly.
I want to say about 95-ish.
Because this form of the playoffs came about in 2014.
This version of the playoffs, I did more research. It actually
Okay.
started, there were different versions.
The other version of the playoffs?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So we'll get that all squared away in the video. But yeah, so that was in response to that, and they wanted to put more emphasis on winning.
Okay.
So everybody will say, well, Kyle Larson won the most races this year, and he wasn't even in the Final Four.
Yeah.
So what are we going to do? Now, Joey Logano won the championship legitimately. He had a legal car at the Charlotte Roval, which somebody else didn't,
Yeah.
and that gifted him a advancement in the playoffs.
He almost didn't have a legal car this weekend, but
I missed that.
he failed tech inspection twice
In
in the lead up.
pre-race, yeah. And they lost their
Car chief.
pit choice, and the
Yeah.
car chief got expelled from the track. Yes. Anyway, and then he won Las Vegas to make sure that he was in the Final Four. So
Yep. And then he won this race.
Yep. So lots of people are hearkening back to the old points system.
Right.
And, they're saying, Christopher Bell would have ended up winning and just edging out Chase Elliott by the virtue of leading more laps at Phoenix, getting bonus points. But the thing is, all the drivers and all the teams who have raced differently had that point system been in. So we can't say that that's who would have been the champion, although Christopher Bell had an excellent year, don't get me wrong. So lots of complaints, but
Yeah.
I've only heard one person really make a suggestion for changing.
What to do instead.
Yeah, so Kevin Harvick on his podcast this week kind of wanted to go to a hybrid to put more emphasis on the regular season.
Okay.
And so what his proposal was that if you win the regular season championship, you're automatically one of the Final Four teams.
Okay, so that would have gone to Reddick this year.
Reddick this year, yes.
He made it in anyway.
He made it in anyway. However, he may not have raced as hard at Homestead to get that win. Number 2, though, would Kyle Larson have made the decision that he made
True. To skip Charlotte.
because of the weather situation, or would he have made sure that he got back in time to be in the car and earn points?
Right.
Because that is what kept him from winning the regular season championship. So
Right.
he would have been in that Final Four. But it goes further. If you finish second in the regular season, you automatically have a spot in the Final 8.
Okay, so that would have been Larson, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Which he made it anyway.
He made it anyway,
But
yep.
third place, automatic spot in the Final 12.
Oh, okay.
And fourth place, an automatic spot in the Final 16. Now he says, now most years, you'd think that they'd be in there anyway if they finished fourth. But we very nearly this year had 16 winners. Mm-hmm. And if you have 16 winners and you're in fourth place but never won a race, you're out of the playoffs.
Right.
What that also does, though, it actually creates more tension in the playoffs because you already have somebody in, so everybody else is racing for fewer spots.
Right. And if you have 3 rounds and 3 winners, like we did going into Phoenix this weekend, that would have been your only 3 in. No one would have gotten in on points.
Correct. So I don't know if that takes care of all the issues, but it does put more emphasis on the regular season. Mm-hmm. The other thing that they were talking about was the collusion that was going on, particularly at Martinsville,
right,
with the manufacturers and whatnot. And he didn't really have a good solution for that, but he basically said that type of stuff goes on all the time, not just at Martinsville. And you see it at the super speedways, the restrictor plate tracks, where the teams purposely race together and work together to move through the field.
You also watch them all pit together so that they
Yes.
have a group to get back out onto the track and draft with.
Correct.
So that they don't end up with stragglers.
Now, Dale Jr. says he doesn't have a problem with that because they're racing hard. What he has a problem with is what happened at Martinsville when they were not trying to pass
Right.
William Byron.
Right.
And also with Bubba Wallace, who apparently didn't have a flat tire and didn't have a suspension problem, thus the fines and penalties that...
Yeah, that one always seemed questionable to me when that came through. Like, that's a very convenient time to have a tire going down.
So those 3 teams were fined a total of $600,000, $200,000 per team, driver and car owner, plus points taken away.
Right.
So that ended up costing, I want to say, the 3 car, sorry.
Austin Dillon.
Austin Dillon, 4 spots in the championship.
He's had a tough year between that disqualification for the playoffs on his 1 win.
At Richmond.
Yeah, and then the loss of points related to that, and then more loss of points here. That's a lot of money.
Yes. Yeah, that's a lot of money for him. That's a lot of money for Richard Childress. That's money that they're not going to have to reinvest in their already struggling program.
Right.
So that had a big impact on them. And I don't know how it's going to impact their sponsorships, but going back to another Richmond incident, the itchy arm spin, that basically ruined Michael Waltrip's race team.
Right.
Because sponsors pulled out after that, and his team had to fold.
Right.
So, anyway.
Their saving grace might be that they have Kyle Busch, and I feel like...
Yeah, I'm not sure how much longer they're going to have Kyle Busch, because that was a very frustrated man at the end of this last year, and he has way more talent than he was able to show off.
True.
So, anyway, the other part of that was Penske finished 1-2.
Yep.
So Logano basically on a late restart picked up a bunch of positions.
Yeah.
And that was the difference in the race.
Yeah.
Was that pass on that restart. Blaney all day long was slow on restarts and was the best car at the end of a long run.
Yeah.
And he probably needed 3 to 5 more laps, and he was going to pass Joey Logano.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering if his equipment was about worn out, though, after having to pass a few more cars and not just get free air like Logano did. But
yeah, he had worked it hard, and he admitted that there wasn't a lot left, but he was still catching
him, yeah.
Yeah, so catching's one thing, passing's another, as they say. So, yeah. So, was it the best weekend of NASCAR watching, I give it a C-.
So it still passes.
Still passes. Yeah, they get to walk on graduation day. But this is once again where the short track package really didn't make for great racing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this next year we're going to see a different tire at Phoenix. I certainly hope so.
Yeah.
I think a different tire can make for a much better race at Phoenix with this current short track package,
Right.
unless they decide to do something completely different with the short track. It's short. Wow. Whew. Short track package.
English as a foreign language is English.
There we go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting track, again, because of the dog leg and having two different sets of corners and all of that. But if no one can pass because you don't have to take care of the tires, so no one has to conserve anything and,
Right.
then we're mostly just watching people ride around. And basically the only time we saw major passing was either Blaney on the long runs or there was a point when the Hendrick cars stayed out longer and had a little bit fresher tires than some of the others.
Right.
And Larson passed several people early on, but then he still kind of got stuck at a certain point. So
Right. So most of the passing occurs on restarts.
yeah, and then you're waiting for another caution.
Right. And there aren't
Stage
a lot
breaks.
at Phoenix
Yeah,
typically. So
yeah, a couple spins, but
right. Well, and the biggest spin was, of course, when the pace car decided to take out the sand barrels at the end of pit road.
yeah,
Yeah. I think he forgot that they're going back to green.
I think so too.
And then right at the last moment, whipped the car around, slid into the sand barrels.
Perpendicular to the track.
Yes.
Like not even that car was perpendicular to
Yep.
the cars coming towards it.
So I watched a video today of the different teams' conversations.
Oh.
And one of them asked Chase Elliott, said, "Did you clip the pace car?" He goes, "No, but it was close." You
I
know?
saw his onboard.
Yes.
And it was like, oh.
Yeah. And then, of course, a number of the teams and drivers were making fun, including Kyle Larson's team, because he ran into the sand barrels
Yes.
at Homestead
Right.
in a race a few years back. And so, a lot of the guys like, they just did a Kyle Larson. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. And, being there in person, we then saw the pace car rip through pit road,
Yeah.
go back through the back access and race away. They had like 4 pace cars there, and they swapped out pace cars and
Yeah.
got a brand new pace car. And, if you're looking for a deal, on a
It's
nice,
only run over one set of sand barrels so
Yeah.
far.
yeah, you can probably get a pretty good deal. Usually they sell those pace cars, as used cars after the race. That one's used and abused.
Has been in an accident, yes.
Yes. That's the Carfax is going to not look good on that one. Yeah. So that was definitely you've been in the sport for a long time, and that was one I have not seen.
Yeah, that was something. And from our angle too, we can't see where they come out of turn 2 and go into the pits super well. And so we could just tell that like something had happened over there, and then we were waiting on the replay. And then it was like, okay, now we saw him run into the barrel, but same question, did he get clipped? What was going on?
Right.
And it took a while for us to be able to see enough replays to see what was going on there.
Yeah.
So from our angle, it was like, what is happening here?
Yeah, it was a bit of a mystery.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure there's some interesting conversations in Daytona Beach on Monday morning after that.
Yeah.
And probably some interesting conversations with the I don't know if it was corporate Toyota that provided those or if it was a local Toyota dealership or a combination of the two. But, well, that's why we have insurance.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever find race controls scanner radio from that?
I don't think they played that, but one of the spotters or somebody said that they told them to put his lights back on, and somebody said, "Well, a lot of good it's going to do him. He's sideways in the pits."
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, that was entertaining.
That was entertaining. All right. Well, it'll be interesting to see. A lot of the drivers are not loving the playoff system. They're not loving what teams are doing. Mm-hmm. So the question is, will there be conversations over the winter, and will they come out with a new playoff format? I don't think they're going to get rid of the playoffs.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
But what are they going to do to enhance them?
I've also seen conversation over adding more races to this final round so that it doesn't all hinge on just one race. Because again, what if you get taken out by someone else in the race and that's it? That's not really representative of whether or not you.
Yeah, I've seen where what's the point total over a 3-race period? Yeah. Which of course then that backs up everything, and that makes the regular season now shorter. Right. If you're going to continue your current playoff rounds, and I think there's a lot to be said for that. Mm-hmm. And it'd be interesting when you look at the last 3 tracks of this current calendar. They're 3 very different racetracks. It's going to produce a legitimate winner, if you ask me, in the championship. So we'll see there.
I've also seen conversation about rotating where the last race is. So not necessarily having it at Phoenix every year, but taking some of these other southern tracks because, you can only go so far north for a November championship.
There have been conversations about that. I mean, for the longest time it was Homestead. Right. But they had a hard time pulling good crowds at Homestead. And so that's one of the reasons why they moved it to Phoenix. And every year that race is sold out at Phoenix. So, you're looking at what's the trade-off. Mm-hmm. You have a lot of your other very popular tracks have traditional dates. Right. So, I think Darlington would be a great place to finish the season. But it's, the Southern 500 is on Labor Day weekend. Yeah. And,
you have Charlotte Memorial Day weekend.
There was hell to pay when they moved it off that weekend. Yeah. And now they finally have it back. So, Charlotte has its Memorial Day weekend date and has turned its second race into the Roval.
Which is already on the playoff calendar.
Right. So, I don't know what the answer is to that. And they already have the schedule out, so that's not going to change.
Yeah, it'd be 26.
Yeah.
At the earliest on changing that.
Right. Okay, well, if we hear anything about that, of course, right now we have Front Row Motorsports and 2311 suing NASCAR over the charter agreement, and they were hoping to be allowed to participate as charter teams until that lawsuit was settled, and a judge last week said no. So we'll see how that all progresses, but it'll be interesting because that could have a large impact on, particularly 2311 is a very popular team for a lot of fans out there. Right. Michael Jordan's one of the car owners, and so
Well, and they just made it to their first Final Four appearance, so this is not the time when you want something like that derailing the focus of the team.
Exactly. Well, let the lawyers worry about that.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that they aren't getting asked those questions every time they go for an interview.
That is true. So, tips and tricks.
Tips and tricks, yeah. Pull up my notes here.
All right. I just drive, so, I can think of several that you're probably going to mention, but I'll let you go through your list.
Okay. So my first one is if you live further away than pretty much Phoenix area and you're planning on going for the whole weekend, go up Thursday rather than trying to go up Friday and then spending all day at the track. This was the first year where we were actually able to do that. And so rather than driving for 2 hours up there and then sitting in the stands the rest of the day with all of our luggage in the car and everything, we actually went up Thursday evening, later than we wanted, but we got up there. And it was nice to actually be able to like settle in a little bit, be at the hotel the night before, and then not have to worry about driving up morning of, not worrying about traffic. All of that was out of the way. Mm-hmm. And so we had a smoother morning, I think, on Friday morning. If you are a season ticket holder, there's also an event for that Friday morning that starts at like 9 a.m. And so we got there at 11:30 as it was shutting down. But
we learned something about it, and we'll probably try to go earlier in the day because they're giving away prizes. There's free food and drinks, and
they had like breakfast burritos.
Yeah, breakfast burritos there, and we left, but they were about ready to do an interview with Richard Petty.
Yeah, they were bringing people out for interviews.
Yes, so really good if you're a season ticket holder. Really good event to go to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and just a lot easier if you're already up there.
Yeah, it seemed much more relaxed than trying to hustle up there and whatnot.
And then along those lines, if you can find a hotel close to the track, we would recommend doing that. We were under 15 minutes from the track this time, and that was very convenient. We didn't have a lot of traffic issues this time, not a lot of waiting around. And other than having to cross railroad tracks, not a lot that would keep us from getting to the track if there are incidents. There are multiple ways into the track, and so if one road were to be closed down, there are other ways to get in. So
a couple things there is, we stayed in Goodyear this year. Avondale's another, obviously the track is in Avondale.
Yeah. Anywhere on that southwest side of Phoenix.
Right. And we discovered, and I actually knew this back from the olden days when I used to go work races at Phoenix, the most direct way into the track isn't necessarily the best way into the track as far as traffic is concerned. And so we always take the very back route into it, and it is incredibly smooth going in. The local police, turn two-way roads into one-way roads. Yeah. They probably have 10,000 orange cones that are set up to keep people in lanes and whatnot. And
the shoulder becomes a lane. It's wide enough to become a lane, and so it makes it really smooth.
Yes, and it's just, again, it took us 18 minutes to get to the racetrack each day.
Yeah. Including on Sunday.
Including on Sunday. It slowed down as we got closer to the track, but it never stopped.
It never stopped, yeah.
Yeah, and so take the back way in.
I think the only exception to this would be, because we have the general parking.
Right.
So if you have the paid parking where you are right up front next to the track, then it might be better to take
the more direct
the
route.
direct
yes
right into the front of the track route. But if you're in the big parking lots in the back, which is where we always are, way easier getting in from the back.
Yep. The other interesting thing was, I don't know what they've done at that end, but in the past, the main way in was often backed up, lots of cars. And we were at the track each day early enough, and we're watching the traffic come over the river.
Yeah, it didn't look too bad.
It wasn't too bad. So actually, in and out, actually quite good at Phoenix Raceway.
Yeah. On that topic also, if you're willing to walk further and be further out, you're probably going to then be able to get out of the track faster. There are trams if you're not able to walk the distance to the track. And it is a little ways. I don't know exactly how far it is, but it's a bit of a hike if you're in the farthest.
The furthest away from the track parking areas.
Yeah, but it's a walk that we did both ways every time, just skipped the tram line. and it makes it so that you're at the front of the line basically getting out of the track, and so that's been nice to not have to wait in the parking lot to try to get out.
Correct.
So
yeah, that has been very handy. The tram is nice. The downside is if you park down at that end, you're going to have to wait a while to get on the tram because it fills up on its way to you.
Yeah.
And then goes back towards the track, and so you're always the last ones if you're at that end. Sometimes it's almost better to
walk up a few
and then grab the tram.
And I think the same leaving the track, going back to the car, if you skip the initial line and then go down a little bit, and then where everyone's getting off, if you hop on there and keep going down.
Then you can take the tram the rest of the way.
Yeah, you're going to have better luck with that.
Right.
But yeah, like I said, we just walk. It's doable.
Yeah, very doable.
So.
Okay.
All right. Let me see. Oh, I also have on arrivals getting to the track early, particularly on Sunday. And again, sellout crowd, so there's going to be a lot of people there on Sunday. We try to be there at least like 2 hours early, if not more, on Sunday. On Friday, Saturday, it's a lot more staggered, I think, when people come, and it's not a sellout. But both Friday and Saturday, there's also like practice and qualifying that sometimes people come to, but sometimes they don't, and so it doesn't really fill up as much until right before the main races.
Right.
And so those you have a little bit more time flexibility, but especially for Sunday, getting there sooner is better.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I think one of my favorite things is that you can bring items in with you. You don't have the little restrictions of like a wallet and a clear bag. So you can bring in a smallish backpack or bag of some sort.
Right.
So we basically used reusable grocery bags as our item on that. And then you can also bring a cooler, a smaller soft-sided cooler.
Yeah, when she's doing this, we bring a pretty good sized cooler. We're able to get food, ice, and 6 bottles of water into that.
Not full-size water.
Not full-size water, but 6 of the smaller waters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's really nice. Your beverages have to be unopened and non-alcoholic, so that is the caveat on that. But I think we only bought a couple of items, basically like one item each day at the track, because the prices are really expensive there. So if you're trying to do this on a budget, bring a cooler, and it's a per person. So in theory, we could bring 2 coolers and 2 backpacks if we wanted to.
Correct.
We brought 3 items the first day because it was cold, and so we brought 2 bags of clothes basically, and then the 1 cooler. The rest of the time we were able to just do 1 bag for extra clothes and scanners, and then our cooler. But I think that's really nice to be able to have those snacks, not have to buy food there, and then bringing in the water is really helpful as it gets hot.
Yeah.
We went through a lot more waters on Sunday when it warmed up than we did the other days, and so it was very helpful to.
It was the only day that we drank all the water.
Yeah, and we went through I think 6 of them.
Yep.
In half a day.
Yep.
So a lot better than buying the $6 bottles of water or whatever they are there.
Yeah.
So bring snacks, bring water. It makes it cheaper. And then we really like having scanners. And if you've never been to a race and this is your first time and you're not sure you want to make the investment, it might be worth it just to rent the scanners that they have at the track. You can do that ahead of time before you get there, and it will be ready to go for you. The downside is that the scanners there aren't great.
Yeah, their quality. I mean, it might have been the sets we've had in the past, but I mean, the quality isn't as good as the scanners that we own now.
Yes. So they're nice to have. You can connect them to each other so that you can also then, if you're there with someone else, talk to them as well. Again, the ones that we ended up purchasing, we can hear each other on much better. The ones that we rented at the track, the microphones just weren't good enough quality to really like pick up, especially for me as the quieter of the 2 of us, pick up what I was saying. So they're helpful, they're nice to have. You can follow a lot more of what's going on, but just be aware that if you're renting one, they're potentially not going to be as nice as what you could buy. And if you know that you're going to be going to races more often, then it's probably worth investing in getting your own.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Well,
Yeah.
if you use the NASCAR app, which you can do, I guess, also.
Yes,
as an
which
option,
is what we did.
if you don't have a scanner. The downside of that is that it has a delay. And so when you have the real scanner, as opposed to using the app, you can actually hear what's going on real time. And that was really nice compared to
The delay that the scanner.
the 30 plus second delay that we were getting at times.
Yeah.
I think especially in the Cup race, we ended up listening to Ryan Blaney's team audio for the Cup race, and on that one in particular, his spotter would tell him like, bottom is clear, drop down, or like, someone's coming bottom, block them, and we were seeing it happen immediately. And when you're doing it off the app and there's a delay, that happened a lap ago, and it doesn't mean anything at that point, really. So then you're
Correct.
just listening for like strategy calls and that sort of thing.
Right.
With the actual scanner, you can actually have what the spotter is doing make sense.
Right. So you're able to lock into one team, or you can truly scan and listen to all the different conversations that are going on, including race control.
Yeah.
Race,
Sometimes that's really interesting.
yes. Sometimes race control will help you figure out what the heck is going on the track,
Yeah.
because they're and explaining their decisions, and
Right.
so quite helpful.
Yeah. So yeah, scanners are nice to have. Bring some sort of ear protection anyway. I feel like this should be an obvious statement, but I'm always amazed at the number of people that I see there without ear protection.
Yeah.
It's loud. And even like with ear protection, if it's not on quite right, I'll still be like, oh, this is kind of hurting my ears. So I don't know how you could go through a race weekend there.
There were some people sitting in front of us that had no ear protection whatsoever, and I'm like, how are your ears not bleeding at this point?
It
Because where
physically hurts at a certain point if you
Yes.
don't have something.
where we sit, we're under part of the cover, and that aluminum roof vibrates from the sound that's coming off those cars, and just that alone is incredibly loud. Not to mention the sound that's coming off the track
Yeah.
that's making that rattle.
Yeah.
And so that rattle that's going on there is going on inside your ears as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely bring ear protection.
Yeah.
You will very much appreciate it. Now, if you forget, there are places in the track that will sell you either earplugs or the over-the-head noise.
For ridiculous amounts of money, but it will save your ears.
I will say though that the over-the-ear ones that we purchased a few years ago was not outrageously priced.
Okay.
I was surprised, actually. I was expecting to pay an outrageous price. It wasn't like the food. The food is outrageously priced.
Okay, that's better.
Yeah. So, but that's one of the things that we enjoy. We enjoy listening in on the teams, and
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's not just the Cup Series that's loud, it's all of them. So don't think if you're going on the Friday, Saturday that you can get away with. If anything, I almost think that the Xfinity cars are louder than the Cup cars, but it's loud no matter what.
Yeah.
And then speaking of where to sit, if you look at ticket prices, typically the most expensive ones are going to be at the start-finish line, which is sort of like the football mentality of sitting at the 50-yard line. But they're not necessarily the best seats, right? Like, yeah, the 50-yard line can be fun, but you might want to sit at the end zone and watch the play unfold in front of you. Kind of the same for NASCAR. Start-finish line can be cool, but it's not necessarily always going to be the best seat. So we did a little scouting this time and may consider moving our seats actually further away from the start-finish line than where we are now, because we think we potentially have found a spot that has a better view.
Yes.
So that's something to consider. You do want to be, if you want to see more, you want to be high enough that you can see through the midfield or the infield, because that will block your view if you're too far down. If you want to be real close to the cars going real fast, real loud by
And you
you.
want to feel the cars
And
going
you
by.
want to vibrate yourself, yeah, then yes, be down lower. But if you want to see more, a little bit higher up, and kind of go from there.
Yeah, I always prefer sitting as high as I can reasonably. It doesn't have to be all that
All the
high,
way,
but the higher the better, just for the vantage point.
And I think if you're talking Phoenix, you probably want to be under the covers unless you're okay with sitting in the sun. As the sun sets around it, you will eventually get shade depending on what part of the stands you're in. But like last year when it was 90 degrees the whole weekend, that would have been really hot to be sitting in the sun and not having any shade for most of the day.
Yeah.
So that's something to consider, particularly with Phoenix and the temperatures that we can have even in November here.
Yes.
And then I think my last point is if you do get a scanner and you do decide to listen to one particular driver, if you can find someone with a fast car, maybe in practice, but for whatever reason didn't do great in qualifying and is going to have to be working their way through the field, that might be someone that you want to listen to because there's going to be more conversation between the driver and the spotter and the crew chief on that team than someone who's starting out front and running away with the thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, not, I don't think on Friday, but that was part of the reason we picked Blaney on Sunday was that he was going to have to, he started 17th, he was going to have to be working his way through the field.
Right.
We had AJ Allmendinger's radio on Saturday. He got a little stuck, didn't necessarily have the fastest car, but we almost put it on Justin Allgaier's at the start there.
Yes.
And I kind of feel like we should have because I'm sure that would have been...
Colorful.
Yes.
At least through certain parts of it.
Certain parts, yeah.
Yeah.
So if you can find a car that's speed-wise out of place after qualifying, you're going to have, I think, more interesting conversation to listen to.
Or listen to your favorite driver.
Yes, or listen to your favorite driver. If you don't have a favorite driver, listen to someone that's going to be going through the field.
Yeah. So, other tips that I was thinking about, if it's your first time at a major race event like that, take your time and go explore. Mm-hmm. So, take all your stuff up to your seat. It's going to be fine. Just leave it at your seat.
We left our stuff at the seat for
couple
hours and wandered around and checked out the different sections and what the views would look like. And
throughout the day in different locations, they will have drivers being interviewed by somebody that you can go and listen to.
Yeah.
They have simulators at different, manufacturers and whatnot where, if you want to wait a little bit, you can climb into a simulator and feel a little bit what it's like to drive one of those cars. They have all kinds of different displays. They have souvenir trailers. They have all kinds of food.
Yeah.
And we were able to share a single yummy dish 2 days that we did that. But go and explore and take your time and don't be in a rush. So get there early enough that you're able to do that.
And I think especially Friday, Saturday would be the days to do that because you're going to have shorter lines for all of that.
Right.
And, like on the driver interviews, you're not going to be so far away because there's going to be fewer people standing out there. So all of that, you're going to have more access if you're there to do that Friday, Saturday.
Yeah. And then the other thing is, as a season ticket holder, we get materials beforehand, and I don't know how that works for other people. If you're buying directly from the track, you're likely going to get that stuff. If you're buying on the secondary market, you might not get that stuff. But one of the things that Phoenix Raceway wants you to do as you're driving to the track is to use Waze. And I think that they do enhanced information to Waze because there's basically 3 routes in.
Right.
3 ways in, 3 ways out. And they're trying to balance the traffic across those 3 entrances. So use Waze on your way in. It will put you on probably the most efficient way in from wherever you're coming from.
Yeah. On the topic of exploring what all is there, if you're also into more of the party scene, which there's not a lot of young and over 21 NASCAR fans out there, I feel like, but there are a few. So if you're into the party scene, pre-race, if you buy the package that allows you to go basically out onto the track, pre-race.
Infield stuff.
Yeah, infield. They've got entertainment down there. So this year they had Nelly playing, which was not a great experience from the stand perspective, but from some videos that I saw of people down there, it looked like it was more fun down there than where we had, the stadium reverberating, because it was
Because the bass
it was so high that it was shaking the stadium as we were trying to eat lunch.
Yes.
Yeah. Apparently we were old and don't do anything
Get
fun
off my
anymore.
lawn.
Get off my lawn.
So yeah. So we were not down there for that, but it did look fun. And there's lots of infield activities and whatnot. And then there's also I think each night after the races, there's entertainment at this barn, basically.
Right. It's a barn bar.
Yeah. And so again, 21 plus for that, but you can go, and I think drivers show up at some point.
Oh, I'm sure
or like
they
the
do.
winner
Yeah,
shows up at some point. So, and they had, I think like on Saturday, I think it was Priscilla Block was the artist performing. And so they have some, bigger name people come through that.
Yeah.
So if you want to stay and, party at the barn after, we have not done that once in our trips there.
No, we haven't, and it's probably one of those things that we would do if we're RVing.
Yeah.
Of course, there is a whole city that forms outside the racetrack with RVs that show up. And if we had an RV there, we would probably partake in the music and whatnot in the barn bar.
Yeah.
And enjoy that, and then just walk to our motorhome and yeah.
Which actually, speaking of that, reminded me of something else that we discovered this time, which was we'd always wondered, can you enter and exit and then re-enter? Because again, we have all these RVs there, and I'm assuming that's what people want to do. And I did see someone there directing a person, go over there, they will scan you out basically, and then it sounded like they'd be able to scan back in. So it sounds like there is a way that you can get in and out if you want to come and go, if you're an RV or that sort of thing.
Right. And you can get there as early as Tuesday before the event, if I remember correctly, if you RV. So you can get all set up and ready to go. Almost all the sites are without water and power. So you're going to be boondocking out there. So, bring enough fuel if you're running a generator. If you have solar panels, excellent, because we will provide enough sunlight for you.
That's not the issue.
Yeah, that's not a problem. It'll generate, fill those batteries up for you. And then there's, they have the big bathrooms and showers and whatnot as well. So that was our trip to Phoenix this year.
Yeah.
Got in and out quickly and efficiently both days. Ran into a little traffic problem on the way home because they have I-10 closed in the middle of Phoenix. So
yeah, that was not race related. That was Phoenix related.
That was Phoenix related. Yes, that was not a problem with how the traffic was handled.
Yeah. I feel like the raceway as a whole has done a really good job of making the process smooth. I mean, I felt like that we had no hiccups on any of our getting in, getting out, being at the track.
Yeah, it was probably the smoothest that we've had.
Yeah.
It's improved each year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know what else I would expect for them to do, further. So. Exactly.
I think also we kind of commented on this. The parking lots are primarily dirt parking lots. And last weekend we had over an inch of rain. And I did see one water truck. Normally you see a lot of water trucks running to keep the dust down. It had rained enough and there was still enough moisture in the soil that it wasn't terribly dusty this year.
Yeah, it wasn't bad.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So here's the challenge.
Okay.
And maybe somebody can put it in the comments. We're done with the NASCAR season. We have 3 races left in Formula One. What are we going to be talking about during the off season of both of our favorite motorsports?
I keep watching. I'm not necessarily watching the games, but I keep watching the results of college football games because with these new conferences, everyone's beating everyone just about, and I'm having lots of fun watching big teams lose. So,
well, we can talk a little bit of college football.
We might have some of that because by the time F1 finishes, we'll be real close to bowl season starting.
That is true.
And then that will finish, and we'll be real close to NFL playoffs starting. We've also got soccer going on, so.
That's true. We will talk a little bit more about the Premier League and what's going on there. Okay. Well, we'll fill it out, and also might be time for us to, do some binge watching and recommend some series or series to avoid.
I've been rewatching How I Met Your Mother, so
that one's worth watching.
On the list of older shows and whatnot that like Friends that have come back around. I've rewatched Friends, so now I'm rewatching.
Well, I mentioned that I watch a lot of spy and espionage type movies, and I watched a couple a few weeks ago. And I was thinking about keeping a list for you and giving them a grade and maybe sharing the grades here as well. I haven't seen anything that you have to see right away.
Okay, not like The Night Agent?
No, which second season's been announced for The Night Agent. So
I think coming out this winter.
Yes. Yeah, and Andor's coming out soon on Disney Plus, which you are not a Star Wars person.
Yeah, I don't know how I sort of missed that whole Star Wars boat, but I really did. So
and
Lord of
there's
the Rings
a lot of
is coming out in a month.
What's that?
Lord of the Rings, the animated movie, is coming out also in December.
Okay, that will be worth seeing, hopefully.
Yeah.
Because the run of Star Wars stuff lately has not been good. But I really enjoy Andor and Rogue One, which was all kind of a prequel to the first Star Wars movie, A New Hope, which was Chapter 4, which then George Lucas went back and did the prequels to that later, much later. Anyway, it's well written, it's well acted, so I'm kind of looking forward to that coming out. Hopefully they're maintaining that level of writing that they had in that first season. And it was a bit of a slow burn, and it wasn't, a lot of people were like, well, nobody asked for this, why is anybody interested? And then a lot of people went, oh, this is really good. So
just took a little while?
It just took a little while, yeah. So anyway, I'm going to have to start a report card of spy and espionage movies, and if I come up with a list of 10, maybe we can go over that. Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, so this is our NASCAR edition.
Yep. And we'll be back next week with our usual episode.
And if anything interesting news-wise comes out on NASCAR, we'll share that during our regular weekly podcast.
Yep.
And otherwise, we're back to the economy and real estate.
Yep.
Starting next week.
Yep.
Okay. Like, subscribe, push that button. Doesn't cost you anything. We appreciate it. And you can listen to us on these various services.
Are you going to do our outro? Do we have a NASCAR-related outro?
No. Checker flag. Lame.
That was a little anticlimactic. So. Okay.
One to go at the line. But that we should have said at the start.
Yeah, or green flag, but...
Yeah, Formula One lights out.
But yeah, lights out was the one I was looking for, but it didn't fit NASCAR, so...
No. Anyway, once again, thank you for stumbling along with us, and we will see you next week.
Bye.